Tim Harrawood is the Contracting Services Manager for the Southern Region for Vance Brothers. Tim is active with PPRA and ISSA and is the current chair of FP2, the Foundation for Pavement Preservation.
Let's talk about the agenda for today's presentation. We're going to give an overview of FP2 and what we do and how we do it. We're going to talk about the pavement preservation research, NCAT and MnRoads, and a small preservation snapshot. We're going to talk about the outreach that FP2 performs through the journal, our website, and through webinars. We're going to talk briefly about the Federal Highway Administration's Pavement Preservation Strategic Plan, our advocacy efforts through FP2, and an overview of the current administration's infrastructure proposal. We're going to talk about the FP2 legislative proposal that is currently being used on the Hill to help further the causes of pavement preservation. And then we're going to talk about the closing comments. But first of all, let's talk about FP2 and its contributors. Contributors are made up of equipment manufacturers, chemical suppliers, associations like EMA, ISSA, ARA, and NAPA, material suppliers, and contractors. And now moving right into the NCAT Mid-Road Preservation Study. The research started in 2012 on Lee Road 159. And I'm not going to get too far into the weeds here, as Dr. Adriana Vargas is going to speak to some specific performance-related information a little later in the conference. But it's important to know that there's 22 state DOT sponsors and industry involved in this research study. The FP2 committee was instrumental in the development of the study way before any of the treatments were installed. And we continue to work closely with NCAT and MnRoads as the evaluation of these pavement preservation treatments is ongoing. It's important to know that FP2 and its contributors continue to fund this research and stay involved with peer review and things of that nature. It's also important to note that we're entering the 9th season since treatment installation. And as Dr. Vargas will surely mention later in the conference, is that all pavement preservation treatments are far outperforming the control sections that were untreated. And then one of my biggest takeaways from this research thus far is the data that shows that the performance far exceeds the survey data that has been used in models, pavement preservation models, for decades. Now, it's important to note that the survey data generally doesn't include the condition of the pavement before treatment. The research that we're doing at NCAT and MnRoads does. It's also nice to know that the findings of this research are widely disseminated. Our Pavement Preservation Journal actually dedicates space for an update in each and every edition, which come quarterly through the Pavement Preservation Journal. Also, this is important, and George mentioned engagement a couple of times in his presentation. And those of us in the pavement preservation industry need to stay engaged with this research as well as other items. And so I'm going to mention that the NCAT End of the Cycle Conference is June 22nd through June the 24th. And it's in Auburn, Alabama, and there's going to be tours of Lee Road 159 and a lot of information on the performance of those treatments. US 280s out there, and some of those treatments are on the accelerated loading facility track as well. So I challenge and recommend that anybody that's interested in that information get registered and attend that conference. The information is fantastic. Again, entering our 9th season, and we're doing extremely well, all of these thin non-structural surface treatments. Let's talk a little bit about FP2's outreach. We do it in several different ways. One way is just recently we had the 2nd annual series with FP2, webinar series with FP2 and PPRA. Appropriately, this was done on Earth Day, which was April 22nd. It was very interesting, and of course with AASHTO, we're going to do webinars spring and fall, and we'll continue to work together with those guys. Back to the Earth Day presentations on the Green Roads Ahead with 3 presenters, Rocky Moretti with TRIP, Charles Small, the Assistant Director of Intergovernmental Affairs with the U.S. Department of Transportation, and Bruce Ullman with BASF's Applied Sustainability Division. I think we had about 190 registrants for that webinar, and I don't think quite all of those actually attended, but it was a pretty good interest level as far as registration goes. And again, it's important to note that FP2 will continue to partner with AASHTO in producing webinars in both the spring and the fall. Other outreach items, we have the Pavement Preservation Journal. Many of you that are attending the conference here today are part of the approximately 5,000 subscribers who receive this quarterly magazine. It's nice to know that 71% of the folks that receive this magazine are agencies and consulting engineers. You can kind of see the pie chart here and how it's broke down. So most of the folks that get this are agencies, but this doesn't really tell the whole story. The Pavement Preservation Journal is also sent out electronically, and the traffic analysis from 2020 and 2021 show that an average of 3,100 subscribers receive the journal electronically each quarter. So those are some pretty good numbers. A little over 8,000 every quarter actually get and view this information. Each edition continues to provide useful information, especially on detailed success stories covering pavement preservation treatments. So it's a great outreach program, and we continue that in a robust fashion. When it comes to switching over to the FHWA pavement preservation strategic plan, I'm going to touch lightly on this because I believe Hari Kala may touch on this in his presentation. But ultimately, the mission with their preservation program is to preserve the nation's valuable highway infrastructure by keeping good roads in good condition using cost-effective pavement preservation. And obviously, the objective is to help agencies consider and implement pavement preservation in a data-driven and systematic manner. That's important because for a lot of years, the data-driven was left by the wayside. It's important to know that they've got a program in place. It's a great program. They continue to support all the educational opportunities between agency and industry, which industry is very thankful for that. FHWA partners with industries such as ISSA in the development of web-based training modules and supporting educational workshop attendance for DOT officials. Furthermore, FP2 participates in the technical feedback group with FHWA. FP2, ISSA, EMA, and ERA, better known collectively as PPRA, have a semi-annual meeting to continue the trend of preservation and to spread the good word. And just recently, there's discussions about potential preservation study at the Turner Fairbanks Highway Research Center in McLean, Virginia. This past Friday, on May the 14th, Turner Fairbanks Research Facility hosted a few industry personnel to discuss the possibility of a pavement preservation research project that could potentially use the new accelerated transportation loading system recently acquired by Turner Fairbanks. Discussions are going to continue with the goal of developing a 2-phase study. Phase 1 would obviously be to learn the instrumentation of the new system and how to apply it to pavement preservation treatments. And phase 2, if phase 1 is successful, would be a full-blown pavement preservation study using the system. So a lot of partnering with FHWA on everything from education to research. Moving on to advocacy. We continue to advocate for pavement preservation. We've got a legislative language task force that develops our legislative proposal, which we'll talk briefly about here in a minute. And ultimately, the goal is to increase awareness, knowledge, and deployment more consistently across the country. Our approach is to illustrate that preservation is a solution, and we all know that it is. And we can do that through the data that we have on global warming or greenhouse gas data, the cost savings, life extending benefits, and condition improving benefits that we've learned about through our research, and then obviously the safety that goes along with that. Here's a couple of slides from our legislative proposal that we use on a regular basis with lawmakers on the Hill. Of course, there's no presentation is complete unless you have a graph. So these are my graphs. And you can see on the left slide that it shows over a 45-year period of time that the use of preservation can maintain pavements in a good or very good condition at a very reasonable cost figure. The red line that you see across the center there, anything below that is when costs dramatically increase, traffic delays increase. It becomes more of a problem area when you drop below the red line there. The sources of information, the sources of this data, I need to talk about first. We used 3 studies. First was a microsurfacing eco-efficiency analysis, final report by BASF in 2012. Secondly was energy usage and greenhouse gas emissions of pavement preservation processes for asphalt concrete pavements. That study was performed by the National Center for Pavement Preservation by Jim Jehovitz and Larry Galehouse. And then lastly, it was the environmental roads of the future life cycle analysis, energy consumption, and greenhouse gas emissions by the COLAS group. So you can see, obviously, we all buy into the fact that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The slide on the left illustrates that. We know that if we drop below that red line, it becomes problematic, more costly, more time-consuming construction, higher greenhouse gas emissions. And if you look at it over a 45-year period of time, the preservation model, you're only looking at about 193,881 greenhouse gases per mile versus the rehabilitative approach, which is about 808,192 pounds of greenhouse gas per mile. If you look at the slide on the right, it even exhibits the cost of that, where the rehabilitative procedure or process is about $43.08 per square yard, or $303,000 per lane mile. The preservation model is quite cheaper at $25.59 a square yard, or $180,154 per lane mile. So it's obvious, it's clear that the preservation strategy is not only good for safety, condition improving benefits, and life extending benefits, but it's great for the environment as well. FP2 fully supports full funding of the Highway Trust Fund, which enables better planning and obviously implementation of that plan. We propose that Congress support FHWA's pavement preservation strategic plan. We need more research to help bridge the knowledge gap and familiarize agencies with the advantages of pavement preservation. We support research in pavement preservation and the greenhouse gas benefits. Additionally, supporting research on autonomous vehicle deployment and pavement preservations. We feel that better pavements will help with autonomous vehicle deployment. Overview of the infrastructure proposal currently out there. It's a moving target, as we all know, and it's kind of fluid at this point. But when we built this presentation not long ago, this is kind of what we were looking at. The administration's infrastructure proposal includes $2.3 trillion towards broadly defined infrastructure. The Senate GOP's counter proposal is about $568 billion to fund more traditional infrastructure. Now that's changed briefly, but like I mentioned, it's a moving target. I'm sure it will change many times again before actually something is finalized. The surface transportation authorization expires on September 30th of 2021. And the ultimate goal is to pass that out of the House and Senate by early summer and sign into law by the expiration date. And the big question mark, obviously, is how will we pay for this? Nobody knows, but we will figure that out on the fly. Preservation database, FHWA database on pavement preservation, needs to collect data on what states are doing, needs to develop fact sheets and research papers, and we support the inclusion and continuing efforts for training through FHWA promotion and industry partnering. such as web-based training that they're currently doing with ISSA and through everyday counts. And in closing comments, FP2 continues to focus on the following: advocating the benefits of pavement preservation. We want to continue our involvement in all pavement preservation research and hope to see everybody at NCAT here this spring, and again at Minroad's facility in the fall. And then we want to inform agencies and industry to the advantage of pavement preservation. And I, like George, would like to take a minute to talk about Judy Corley-Lay and all of the effort that she has put in through the last 5 years to further the causes of pavement preservation. It goes without saying, she was instrumental in moving this forward, like George had mentioned earlier. FP2 thanks Judy, and I do personally as well, for all of her efforts, and do hope that all of her retirement dreams come true. So thank you, Judy, for all you've done.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.